Hey everybody, Mike Iaconelli back out here in the shop with a brand new episode for you today. And in today's shop, we're talking about my top 4 baits for the month of October. Top 4 bass baits for the month of October. All right, before we get into it, let me remind you how this works. I'm going to give you 2 baits that are good for water above the Mason-Dixon line, Virginia North, and I'm going to give you 2 baits that are great below the Mason-Dixon line, the Carolinas South. But keep in mind, all 4 of these baits are good no matter where you go in the month of October. Let's talk about what October means for the fish. And as you know, October is fall fishing. October is 100% fall fishing. If you remember from some of my other videos talking about patterns, you know that as the water cools, the bait moves shallow, the bass follows the bait, but then sometimes, usually in the month of October, November, the fish are done feeding up and they start going back to where they're going to winter. So October is a month where it's fall fishing, but it's that fall transition. And fish are transitioning to eating like crazy to starting to head to where they're going to go for the winter. So here are my top 4 baits for the month of October. We're going to start in the north, but remember this bait works in the south as well. And my number 1 bait in the month of October is a suspending jerkbait. If you remember from any video that I shoot where I'm talking about fall fishing, there's one word and it's bait. And a jerkbait does a great job of imitating bait fish. I love the suspending jerkbait because it's a lure that can do double duty. It's great for fish that are still feeding in the fall, that are munching, but it's also a lure that I can keep in place, a lure that I can fish slower for fish that are heading toward their wintering areas, right? So it's doing double duty for me. It's covering a lot of water. Feeding fish are going to eat it. But if fish are moving back out, I can fish this over a spot and leave it in place on the end of a point. A lone boulder, a channel swing, head it back out toward the main lake. I can hit it, leave it in place, keep it in the strike zone a lot longer. This is becoming my favorite new suspending jerkbait. It's the Rapala Maverick. It's brand new. The thing I love about it, dude, it casts a mile. They have a weight transfer system in here that allows me to cast this thing like a bullet. The other thing I like about this bait, it gets down really quick. So fish that are suspended or a little deeper, this is a better jerkbait. So number 1 lure in the month of October, especially up north, is a suspending jerkbait. All right, number 2, and this is for the north, but it could also work in the south, in October is something a little more finessey. You heard me say in the beginning, when they're done that fall feed where they're gorging themselves, and a lot of times that's September, maybe early October, but at some point, those fish are done actively feeding and the bite toughens up. It could happen as early as October. Sometimes in the south, it goes to November and December, but when that happens, I want a bait imitating lure, a shad imitating lure that's smaller. And because of that, a finesse swim bait really starts to play into my arsenal in the month of October. I basically like a 2 to 4 inch swim bait. Without a doubt, my favorite's the old 2.8. I don't care what brand you're using. This is the Berkley Power Swimmer 2.8. I fish it in a shad pattern. This, in fact, is one of my favorite colors. This is the Pro Blue Pearl. It's got a little pearlescent to it, a little sheen. Very much looks like a shad. And I just pair it with a ball head or that VMC Finesse Half Moon. I like an 1/8 to 1/4, but a 3/16 ounce size is perfect. Now, guys, this is my bait for when it's tougher. Those days when I'm around the fish or I find a key spot, I catch 4 or 5 on this, then the bite slows down, I pick up a spinning rod, and I throw this 2.8 power swimmer. The great thing about a finesse swim bait is I can count it down to the level of the fish. So in the month of October, you're going to have feeding fish that are higher up in the water column. You're going to have less active fish suspended or lower in the water column. With an 1/8, a 3/16, or a 1/4 ounce jig head, I can literally count it down to the fish. If you're using forward-facing sonar, I can literally throw it at the fish and put it right in front of them. Catch a lot of fish doing that in the month of October. One last thing on this one, not a bait cast application, guys. Spinning rod, 7 to 7.5 foot medium action spinning rod, braid to a floor leader. Perfect, perfect bait for the month of October. All right, there's your 2 north baits. Now it's time for the 2 south baits. Let me start with the one that you're going to say, Mike, you're sounding like a broken record because this was also in your September top 4. Well, it's going to stay in October because that's how good it is, and it's a crankbait. Guys, if there are any time of the year when this thing really shines, it's spring and fall. Crankbait could be great in the winter. Crankbait's awesome in the heat of the summer. But my number 1 time for a crankbait is pre-spawn and fall fishing. And the month of October is no different. Let's just talk about the rule, and you know my rule for crankbait fishing. I want to pick a bait that runs as deep or deeper than the depth of water you're fishing. So for me, in the month of October, a Rapala DT8, a Rapala DT10, a Rapala DT14, they're the baits that I'm really using. That 8 to 14, that 8 to 12 foot zone, phenomenal in the month of October. And this is really a bait that works down south, but can work up north too. The thing I love about a crankbait in October is those fish that are coming out of the pockets and creeks, they're traveling up the break lines. And I'm able to cover water with a crankbait, deflecting on the bottom, and the lure, not my depth finder or forward facing, the lure helps me find those key little areas where fish can group up in the month of October. So if you're watching this and you live in Texas and you're fishing the big Texas impoundments, if you're watching this and you live in the Carolinas and you're fishing man-made reservoirs, if you're in Alabama on the Tennessee River, dude, the crankbait will start to do work in the month of October, cover a lot of water, hit the bottom, and you're going to catch some fish. Number 3 in October, crankbait. Last but not least, this is the month where I start transitioning back to other forage types, lures that imitate other forage types. You heard me talk a lot on these first 3 about it imitating bait fish. Sometime in October, November, they start to eat other stuff again. And my number 4 lure for the month of October, especially in the South, is a jig. But not any jig, guys, a football head jig. I traditionally like a 1/2 to a 1 ounce. The 1/2 and the 3/4 are really phenomenal. This is the Missile Headbanger jig. I love this one. And on trailer, all summer long, you remember the water's hot, so I wanted a lure with a lot of action. A double-tailed grub, a crawl with big arms. But in October, as that water starts to cool, guys, I'm going back to the chunk-style trailers. If I can open this up, I'm going to show you. I start going back to the chunk-style trailers, and this is one of the best trailers you could put when you want a chunk-style trailer. It's a Maxcent chunk, the rabbit ear style, and it helps a big profile. Remember, that thing still has action, but it's more fluid. It's not necessarily big. So football jig, chunk style trailer, and in the month of October, when they start feeding on crawls again, this is a great bait. You know, area-wise, I'm really targeting hard spots that are headed out of where they did the fall feed, okay? So a pocket, a creek, if you look at that pocket in the creek, I'm hitting hard cover targets as I come out of those places. So, give you an example, a secondary point with a boulder on it. Great spot for a football. A main point with a lone dock, boat dock on it. Great spot for a football jig. So I'm really targeting hard objects on the way out of pockets and creeks and coves. Football jig, number 4 top October bait, especially in the South. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this one. We're talking about my top 4 baits in the month of October. It's a great month to fish. It's not too cold yet. The fish are still biting. Give it a try. Try those 4. You're going to catch more fish. Listen to me. Before you click off, see that down there? Subscribe button. Hit the subscribe button. Subscribe to the channel. If you're already subscribed, tell your friends about Mike Iaconelli Fishing on YouTube. We're here to help you become a better angler. Bye. Hey everybody, Mike Iaconelli. I hope you enjoyed this week's In the Shop. I hope you learned a little bit. And if you like these videos, remember, there's a whole boatload. Check out these 2, and you're going to learn more about bass fishing.